We'll do a bunch of stuff. I love that tune.
Good evening and welcome to Field Talk. I am the Field, also known as Field of Bears, here to remind you that socialism always ends in starvation and genocide. Allow me to deposit some delicious peppermint tea into my very handsome mug, which you can get at the link labeled mug in the description below. Very own. Put it in its proper place, above the inferior ugly mug. Ah, delicious. And before we get started, allow me to say hello to Cold as Ice Bear, B West, Sarge, Andrew J, Bonnie Bear, and one more person. Boulder. Yes. Hello to Boulder. Andrew J. Yes, it was Boulder. So education. On education, just in general. Because I've been thinking about it just a little bit today. What is education? Well, most people, when they think of education, they think of a school. You go there, the bell rings, you sit down, you listen to the teacher going on and on about something you don't care about until you finally get to go home and, well, do all the homework to make sure you learned all the things that you weren't listening to. But that's not what it's supposed to be, is it? Education is supposed to prepare you for something. You're supposed to leave the education educated in something at the very least. I don't know, the civics, rhetoric, communication, mathematics. Those would be pretty good to be educated in, I think. Pretty good sort of standard bar at which the things could be set where everyone would at least have kind of a basic skill set in order to get by in life. And maybe throw in like some, home economics and shop as well. Just so that, everyone can read a tape measure and properly scoop out flour. All well and good. That sounds good, right? That's what education ought to be, isn't it? But the thing is we've got the 12 years of compulsory education here in the United States. I don't know about those of you who might be from different countries, your education system is like, but our education system is so, so wonderful and trusted that pretty much any sort of profession which requires a credential will not accept a high school diploma as a credential for anything. Many construction companies, in fact, won't accept high school diplomas as a credential for anything, and instead will bring you on for a probationary period and completely ignore your resume. So it seems that 12 years of compulsory education leaves most people in America completely without any skills which can approach anything resembling useful or valuable or not a complete waste of the student's time. I don't know about you, but my memory of the government education system goes something like this. I go to the building, I sit down, and you listen. And you don't move, because moving is bad. And you wait for the bell to ring. And then when the bell rings, then you're allowed to move. And you do that over and over and over again until there's a test. And you try and remember the things you listen to on the test. And you're very good if you remember all the things that you listen to. You're very bad if you don't remember any of the things that you listen to, and there are some things in between. These are delineated through letter grades or percentiles. I was pretty good at remembering things, but that doesn't mean that I was good at doing things. Because the only thing I learned how to do in school was sit down and listen and read. Well, mostly I read. I was meant to be listening. But there was language arts, there was history, there was mathematics, sure. But problem is any kind of profession which requires any kind of competency in any of those areas will, on top of that, require 4 years of very expensive very expensive voluntary education on top of the compulsory education, which is meant to prepare the American youth to enter into the workforce. Now, I hardly think that making next 4 years compulsory and free is a solution to our educational crisis, as the Bernie Sanderites will tell you. But the fact remains that what we call education isn't very educational, is it? Sure, there are lots of great teachers. There are even some whole schools full of great teachers, and they're amazing. And the kids that pass through those institutions manage to pick up some useful skills. You know, reading, writing, arithmetic, rhetoric, the ability to make and keep connections. All very good. But let's be honest, in America, that is not the normal experience. That is not the experience that most of us were treated to. Not in the slightest. Most of us are lucky, really lucky, to have one or two teachers firmly cemented into our memories as actually caring. Self fortunate enough to have two. One in elementary school, who was the only teacher who didn't give me detention for reading in her class. When I say reading in her class, I mean reading books that I was not meant to be reading at that time because I had already finished what the rest of the class was meant to be. She allowed me to read novels and other books, nonfiction books as well, some encyclopedias, dictionary if I had forgotten anything interesting. But she allowed me to explore things I was interested in. I managed to learn a whole lot of volcanoes, a whole lot about volcanoes in third grade because, well, She pointed me to the section in the library where all those books were. I got to spend time just reading them instead of, well, something I'd already mastered. I didn't need to be hearing again. I'll never forget her. She was really excellent. The other teacher I really remember for caring, another woman. Really? This wasn't until I was a junior in high school. Well, when I say high school, I mean independent study because after my sophomore year, I'd had enough. I'd had enough of living life by bells. And I went and I talked to the office if there was another option to complete my diploma. And they told me about this called independent study. And they explained it to me like this. Well, you read the book and then you take a test. Oh, and there's some homework as well. But you do it all from home. And, well, golly gosh, that sounded amazing to me. It was exactly the kind of thing that I needed in order to, meet the state's requirements for education. But the teacher, who basically just graded my tests notes, she noticed some of the things I wrote down just out of interest because I'd never been much of a note taker. But when I noticed something kind of interesting, I would note down research later. And every time she noticed that, she would ask me about it and would have long conversations about the things that I had researched, especially when it came to my civics course. I read a lot of Greek philosophy thanks to her. Excellent teacher. I'll never forget her. But I could sit here and tell you horror stories about my second grade teacher who relentlessly bullied me. Lucky thing I was pretty good in a scrap because the other kids thought it meant it was bullying me. I could tell you about fifth grade teacher who just didn't really care about anything at all. I could tell you about I could tell you about the teacher who wasn't even in charge of me, who demanded that that my medication dosage be upped because I was upset at a certain day. I could tell you about the middle school teachers. So again, they didn't seem to care, or at the very least, they couldn't connect with me. And I think that a lot of you guys in my chat, and you guys listening later, I think a lot of you would identify with those horror stories. I think you could trade them with me all day long. And I think that's a more complete picture of what the American education system is like. Bit of a horror story, isn't it? But maybe we're asking the wrong question. Maybe we shouldn't be asking about what is the nature of education, but what is the nature of the state, the government of, well, everything that the government does. Bloated, inefficient, and slow to adapt. That's just the positive way of putting it. When you get right down to it, the state is force. It is violence. It is violence with the legitimacy of the vote behind it if you live in a republic or a democracy, or the will of the king if you don't. Hello, McNicktown. Welcome, Inspector, and hello, Slap Weasel. Don't worry, I notice. I notice when you guys come in. The state wants to perpetuate itself, because all the state really is people who want to exercise force, want to consolidate and maintain their power over other human beings. And we can see this in a lot of police forces. If you talk to my friend Steve Bender, you will endlessly point out examples of exemplary police officers who do a really excellent job and deserve to be treated with honor. And I think that policing should be treated like an honorable profession. That being said, you didn't say anything, Roy. You have to actually say something in the chat for me to notice you. I might have been on a roll if you said something and I missed it. I do apologize to anyone in my chat who I've missed. Ah, dang it, Roy. I've been derailed. You squirreled me. And Steve isn't even here. I mentioned him and you squirreled me. It's what happens. No, it's what happens. Magical powers. Can't even name him. Apparently. Now where was I? State is force. Blah blah blah. Dang it. Where was I? The state is force. Oh, police. Yes, the police have an interminable problem of becoming corrupt. Just look at civil forfeiture. Now, if you follow, they're on Twitter for now. Nonprofit organization called the Institute for Justice. I highly recommend it. They highlight very important Supreme Court cases about your right to property. So you should, and they have a really good website as well. So check it out at your earliest convenience because it has a lot of great information on it about your right to property and how to fight against civil forfeiture. And it keeps you up to date on the Supreme Court's decisions and cases that are into that whole thing. But since a lot of police departments lack accountability, and they have unbelievably strong unions, get into that. Don't worry. It becomes very difficult for a police department to rid itself of bad actors and warn other police departments about them, who might not be, let alone just like, even if you discount criminal policemen, just incompetence. They can't even warn each other about an incompetent police officer who was fired for being bad at his job or not doing his job very well. Thanks to the protections for those officers won by police unions codified into law. Not too great, is it? Hello, Vigrigan. Welcome. So, in this government organization called the police, which is a necessary function of any society in order to make sure that people treat each other peaceably and that bad actors are sort of contained when they refuse to respect each other's rights, we have for a very long time trusted the government to do that. But since the government is the final arbiter of the use of force, it's very difficult to hold them to account for misusing that power. Which is why many police departments have to contend with the problem of corruption. Now, this same problem exists in everything that the government does. If you don't believe me, just go to the DMV. Take a look. Just go to the DMV and look around. And so, when you put the state in charge of something as important as educating for kids, you're trusting you're trusting something with the inborn problem of corruption. Not only does this have the problems of the state tailoring what your kids learn to be a benefit to itself, um, for instance, getting them to support the government, getting them to support various positions, pro-socialism. I'm drinking tea out of this mug, Inspector. Because it is a weekday. And I'm only part Irish. So it's fairly obvious that if the government is in charge of education, it will attempt to inculcate beliefs into kids that, oh no, it's peppermint tea, I promise. So, guys, is somebody abusing their wrench? Is someone abusing their wrench? You just got out of jail, Boulder. See what happens. That's what happens when you abuse power. I am not collectively bargained against by a corrupt wrench union. So that's what happens, Boulder. I hope you've learned your lesson. I might give your wrench back later, maybe if I feel like it. Anyway, now the unions and the police are not the only problem. We've also got a problem of unions in teaching. Now you can look this up, but there have been several cases in which the California Teachers Union has gone out of their way to protect convicted pedophiles, convicted child molesters, and the bad naughty word I can't say on YouTube. Well, you can look it up. I'm sure that in your state it's happened as well. But another thing I despise about the government under despise it because the union's interest is to continue collecting dues from as many members as possible. And if you happen to be in a state without right to work, then every teacher is forced to join the union. And therefore, it's not in the union's interest for any teacher to be fired, ever. And so, even if they're convicted of crimes, they can't be fired. Even if they're convicted of sexual crimes, they can't be fired. I don't know if that's still the case. I wouldn't put it past the unions to defend one of them again. And just another fact you can look up if you want to. Your child is more likely to be sexually abused in the public school system than the Catholic Church. And we all know about the many scandals the Catholic Church has undergone. As well as this most recent one from last year, I think it was in Boston. Hello, Goose. So when it comes to inculcating values, both moral and civic values, trusting an organization, leaving the corruption aside that is so bloated and inefficient as the government to do it, I think to be highly unwise. Yeah, see what happens, Boulder? See what happens? That's what That's what happens when you abuse your power, Boulder. I don't feel bad for you, and I'm not even going to take it away from Roy. Actually, I can get used. Sec. I'll show you guys. That I said my bit. To me, I think that private schools and home schools, if you can do it, are your very best option. If you can't do that, then really be involved. Just be involved with the education of your kids. Talk to them every night. Help them with their homework. Do all that great stuff. So see if I can grab you some ranch pictures real quick. Yeah. And then we will be doing Florida Man after that. Alright, so not only do I have lambs, I have chicks. You know, for chickens. One of them escaped yesterday. He was sitting on top of a salt bucket. Oh, that way. We got a new chicken coop. The cat seems to like the nesting boxes. See, look, more chicks. Behold the mighty huntress. She caught a big moth. I like butterflies. Shut up. Peach blossom. We have spring here. I guess it must be winter wherever you are. I'm not sorry. I also have kittens. They're starting to be curious about the world. Look at them. They're adorable. I love them. That is the new chicken coop. We just said it. Those are plum blossoms. The neighbor's turkeys escaped. I had to help them get them back in. Funny. I had to take some pictures for my dad. Speaking of my dad, there he is. Look at him on the tractor. Sorry, I'm trying. There we go. There's the lambs. Check them out. Aren't they great? Alright, now we will do Florida Man.
Florida Man. We all said no. He said, yes, I can. Florida Man. He always gets caught. He never has a plan. Florida Man. We all said no. He said, yes, I can. Florida Man. He always again. Florida man. We all said no. He said, yes, I can. Florida man.
Alright, before I get into Florida Man, though, I'm just going to head over to my chat page and find Boulder if I can find him. Give him his there. I'll give him his wrench back. There you go. You're back. Now you can get picked on again. Just don't do that again. I will punish you swiftly. So, as you guys can see the headline already, Florida man 32 is charged with bludgeoning father 74 on fishing trip, officials say. This is according to Fox News. A Florida man has been charged with beating his sleeping father to death with a spare boat alternator while 66 miles offshore on a fishing trip, according to reports. Florida man 32 was arrested on a second-degree murder charge on Tuesday, the Naples Daily News reported. If convicted, TV station reported, he'll face a maximum penalty of life in federal prison. The death of his father, Robert, 74, aboard a commercial fishing vessel. Multiple reports suggested the son may have been triggered by past abuse. Florida man claimed that Robert did the naughty word I can't say on YouTube to him several times when he was a child, and he had started messing with him before the latest events unfolded. I thought this story would be funnier, guys. I'm sorry. The Brandon Herald reported that according to jail records, the son has previous arrests on charges of kidnapping, possession of a controlled substance, assault, possession of cocaine, and a violation of protection injunction. He also previously served 2 terms in prison related to aiding an escape of an aggravated assault. Well, Florida man, if that indeed did happen to you for a child, let's switch to this one. There we go. I can see my eyes. It's like I'm looking into your soul. Very good. Well, Florida man, if that really did happen to you when you were a child, I'm terribly, terribly sorry. I can understand wanting to murder the one who did that to you to death. I really can. However, if you're just saying that, then that's pretty bad. I go off of the headlines. I don't read these stories ahead of time, guys. I don't. I just pick a headline that looks pretty good. That was just a bit more heavy than I expected, but that's not the first time it happened. However, I do like the bit where beat him to death with a spare alternator. I mean, you couldn't find anything like an oar or maybe a fishing pole. I'm drinking tea, Goose. I'm drinking tea. Because it's a weekday and I'm only part Irish. No, I don't drink on the weekdays usually. Mostly. Shut up, Boulder. Not bourbon this time. Yours was a crazy guy shooting up a Trump resort in Miami. Golly, peppermint tea. because I was getting a little bit of a headache, and it's actually really helpful for that. All right, chat. I like your joke, Boulder, but I hope you don't. All right, chat. What is going on with you? Oh, speaking of Boulder Bear, or is it Boulder? Speaking of Boulder Bear, look forward to him being on this Saturday for the Saturday interview show, where we will have a proper interview. I don't know what the next one will be like. I will probably do a show on Friday. Maybe do something fun and lighthearted. Try and think of something we can write together. So look forward to that. Fender will be doing his show tomorrow, probably, if he does his show. It's an excellent show. If you're not subscribed to Steve Pinder's channel, please subscribe. Even though he does produce a clearly inferior mug, which belongs beneath the clearly superior handsome mug. Speaking of the handsome mug, you can get one for your very own if you just follow the link labeled mug in the description. If you would just like to support me, you can do so at paypal.me/fieldtalk. All link is also in the description. If you would like to follow me on social media places, I have a Gab and a Minds, and you can talk to me there. I am not on Twitter because I have been permanently banned for being mean to pedophiles. There is, however, a fan account being run by someone who is definitely not me, who claims his name is Not Field. Last name, or was it Field Not? I don't remember. It's clearly not me. Anyway, he does seem to be fairly consistent in giving you the links. So you can follow that account if you would like to. You could also follow my Facebook page if you haven't been sucked yet. And you can follow my Instagram for pictures of the ranch. Like the pictures I just showed you. Just for fun. And as always, have a great night, and never forget that socialism always ends in starvation and genocide.